Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 8th edition of the SASI debate. This is all about our Speak and Solve initiative brought to you by SAYWHAT, supported by SEAL, SAYWHAT Events and Lifestyle, courtesy of the Nyarazo Group. And I am your debate master. You can call me Master Jumbe. And today I'll be participating in the organization as well as the instrumentalization around what will be going on in today's debate. I'm joined by some very intellectual individuals who've come from far and wide across the continent and the nation to provide their ideas and ideologies concerning debate. Who do I have the honor and pleasure of being with today? Please do inform us with your introduction, who you are and what institution you are representing. Podium number 1.
Hazel from UZ with Vanelli from UZ.
And podium number 2.
Kudzaisha Jakata from GSU.
And Prince Mube from GSU.
And podium number 3.
Takuzo Chingwaru from Marindra University, along with me is Polite Banda from Marindra University as well.
And podium number 4.
Barbara Spana speaking with Shane Suzindove from LSU.
That's great. We have quite the caliber of institutions here today. As your debate master, I will be guiding you on the various instructions concerning today's debate. Today's debate will follow a British parliamentary style. Today's debate will follow a British parliamentary style. We'll have two teams opposing as well as 2 teams proposing. These 4 teams are very intellectual, but one thing must be understood. They must stay within the stipulated speaking limits. You will all be allocated just 4 minutes to speak, as well as 15 seconds for your points of information to be raised. Within that capacity, I hope that you understand the importance of civility and sportsmanship as you conduct yourself throughout this debate. This is not a scrap match, but this is the art of articulation. We will now also go to the motion of the day. The motion of the day reads as follows. This House believes that the rise of digital visibility has amplified youth-led advocacy, but diluted its long-term impact. I shall read the motion once more. This House believes that the rise of digital visibility has amplified youth-led advocacy, but diluted its long-term impact. The motion has been read. The players have been acquainted. You know what time it is. It's time for us to seal the deal. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SASI Debate Challenge, and I am joined by some very intellectual individuals. May the Prime Minister kindly take the stand and provide us with their perspective on the motion.
Mr. Speaker, you're about to hear the best PM in this tournament so far. I'm going to do a lot of things for you. Firstly, I'm going to show you what the rise looks like within status quo. I ought to understand that it looks like things like slackvism, where people are actively doing activism just online and not necessarily having a follow-up, right? It also looks like people actively being online doing e-activism, where they're just posting hashtags and not necessarily following through with those particular hashtags. We think it looks like trends, Mr. Speaker, where individuals are just going to buy into something that's particularly trending and not necessarily airing out those particular views, but it also looks like things such as the base of algorithms. I'm going to expand further on these things. In all these things that I've mentioned, particularly on the rise, we acknowledge 2 things. One, we think it amplifies the voices or the reach that these individuals have because it's a trend, but it's something that people just like because it's on social media, right? We think that kind of visibility is there. People notice these kind of things. We think the problem, therefore, is on the long-term kind of engagement with this particular issue, right? What does long-term engagement look like? I think it looks like things like buy into that particular movement, right? It also looks like policy change into that particular movement. It also looks like systemic change in general in terms of understanding and narratives, right? We don't think you achieve these particular things because trends are short-lived in their particular nature, right? That is to say, most of those particular ideas are just based on what's trending at the current time, and in the long term, you don't get any sort of engagement with that particular movement, right? But two, we think there's a lot of access from opposing views. That is to say, if you notice how there was a hashtag free Didi, where people were paid to actually post that, it became a trend and Didi was free. We don't like that kind of engagement because now it means that you don't have particular long-term effects of that particular activism initially that happened when people called out Didi and went to actually talk about those things. There are a lot of things, right? But how is it diluted within status quo? We think there's lack of proper action to call for that particular thing. That is to say, most of the times it's just based on because my favorite celebrity posted this, I'm just going to post this because I want likes. It's not necessarily because I have bought into that particular movement. We think it's particularly important for you to have that kind of buy-in, right? But two, we think it's very particularly important when you then sort of become elitist about it. I think I've already showed you how there are some people that are actually paid to do this because they're going to get money from it. We think there's a lot of things that happen on social media, right? But three, we think the platforms that happen or that these things particularly happening is particularly bad, right? Because we think initially social media is meant for entertainment. So what does this then look like? I think it looks like individuals scrolling through a certain ideas, not reading and they're not informed about that particular idea, meaning they don't buy into that particular movement because they just saw hashtag Black Lives Matter and they don't care about the context that exists in this particular thing. I know opposition is going to come here and say, well, but George Floyd. Yes, I'm strawmanning you, right? It's very important to understand that George Floyd, the incident, was based on people going to march on the streets. They stormed Parliament about what was happening with police brutality. That's why it became a trend in terms of social media. I want you to understand the trend in which it became something that's particularly fruitful, right? This debate is about advocacy. I'm going to show you in principle. We think when you take away things such as hard stances, things such as civil disobedience, you take away the tools for mass political and social change. When you do that, you don't sort of suffice those particular individuals that are supposed to be protected by these particular things, right? But also, you think it's a very extreme soft line when individuals know because it's a safe haven where you don't have to even be accountable for what you post, right? We don't like that kind of rhythm because it takes away the long-term effects of a movement in any case, right? We think when people are then accrued to that particular culture, there's less accountability or there's less like people that are leading that particular movement because it's just on social media and who has more likes. It's no longer about what you are likely to have to change. We think it creates a scapegoat for individuals that incite things that don't necessarily are sort of protective. Super proud.
Very engaging, Mr. Prime Minister, very engaging indeed. We'd like to now hear from the leading delegate from the opposition. May you please come forward and take your stand.
Ladies and gentlemen, first I would just like to define digital visibility. These are the ways in which the youth are reaching a greater audience through digital means, like online campaigns. Digital visibility through the internet makes people aware of problems which are affecting them. The youth being engaged from a young age through TikTok trends makes them knowledgeable on how effectively to communicate digitally, which leads to proper change in the long run. The mass audience pushes the government towards policy change. What are the long-term impacts we aspire to change? We need systemic change. We need dismantling of unfair systems. And this has happened through online trends before, like George Floyd, for example. These movements happened during COVID, and they were largely organized on the internet, as people could not meet in person. And not all trends are negative, such as free Didi, like they've mentioned before. Yes? Hashtag #EndSARS in Nigeria is an online movement which led to the dismantling of the SARS unit of the police in Nigeria, because this was a unit which went viral because of police brutality. This led to systemic change, which is exactly the kind of change that we seek through the digital visibility campaigns. These online movements, they also provide historical records for future movements. It's not all about 15 minutes. These online movements can provide context for future movements, for the youth and for the grown-ups. Not all of these online movements are trends. How is digital visibility securing the long-term impacts? Through online campaigns which combine a lot of people worldwide, we can the mass audience enables the impact starts from awareness. So it's important to spread the message in order for us to experience a real impact. And with this, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I will now request the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister to approach the stand and make his case known.
Panel, we feel that side opposition is trying to gaslight you guys into thinking that awareness is the end goal. We think that Wanele does pretty well in his Prime Minister's speech when he talks about the long-term effects. Just a reminder to that. He says that long-term effects look like policy change, they look like systematic change, they also look like the general buy-in into certain movements. So this already disqualifies side opposition from this debate, but we'll try to engage either way. They come and tell us about how technically this creates a historical movement. A basic response to that Banele even still covers within his speech. We think that there is no historical basis on trends that don't last. We feel that at the end of the day, so social media trends or digital visibility doesn't assure the long-term impact because we think that trends are things that people buy into and quickly forget. We think something you saw on Instagram yesterday could have spoken to you, but it is easily forgotten by the realities of life. Therefore, we really can genuinely not buy into that, right? So we come and we also tell you that visibility looks like accessibility to the general user, right? Why is this so important, right, as an extension to Wanele's speech? We feel that at the end of the day, there's a creation of echo chambers where the only people receiving awareness are those that like that kind of subject. So what does Wanele also tell you within his speech? He comes and tell you that digital visibility is based off of algorithms, right? We think that this is particularly important within this debate because we think that you're only made aware or exposed to the things that are most likely favorable to you by virtue of things being algorithms. So we think already on an analysis of access, we don't think that you get as much buy-in compared to when people protest on the streets and it's on the news and everywhere, right? But either way, we come and we tell you that at the end of the day, we think we regret this because, number one, we come and we tell you about the general nature of youth and young people within society. We think these are people that are not valued in terms of their perspectives, that are undermined. Why do we then regret this rise particularly? We regret it by the extent whereby it trivializes the impact that they have in society. That is to say, their voices are not merely heard, they're people merely heard online and seen as people holding trends. We give you a basic example of the Olarato trend. point. We think that last month, the death of Olorato spiked a lot of fries, spiked a lot of things. We don't think there has been efficient, systematic change, and just like usual, the trend is over and on to the next thing. So this is why it's so detrimental. We think that the long-term effects are never achievable. We think you get awareness, but we don't value awareness if it's going to exist for 5 seconds. We value awareness when it has a long-term impact on society, when it actually brings about change. But what else do we tell you, right? We tell you that at the end of the day, we think that information is not inherently enough. We think that if information and awareness ties down to not having protests, if you value a world where we delude or remove protests from existence so that you just simply have awareness, we don't value that. We think that there's a certain value that comes with protesting. There's a certain value that comes with aggressive stances against certain regimes, because the people in power are highly unlikely to succumb to certain things. We think that social media trends are things that they could easily ignore, but they're not going to ignore the people who are going to stand at a parliament building protesting for days. We think that by virtue of that, you get long-term impact. You don't get those long-term impacts when you simply create a social media trend that doesn't exist preceding a week. We think that you don't get that when you create a social media trend that people are going to forget about. You might get awareness, you might get people, you might get numbers, but at the end of the day, the awareness ceases to lose its effect when the impact is not felt. Proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deputy Prime Minister. I will now ask and request for this time for the Deputy Leader of the opposing delegation to come forward.
Okay, so panel, we are dealing with a delegation that did not even care to define on the long-term impact that they want to see coming from youth advocacy panel. Do they want to change the mindset? Do they want to change the system? Do they want a long-term change in policy? Panel, they did not even define their long-term impact. So panel, we're simply basing with a delegation that is here, that is actually here, saying that digital visibility actually dilutes long-term impacts. But what long-term impacts? They did not tell us, panel. Now, panel, they did not define the parameters of this debate. What are they basing on, panel? Panel, are they basing on Zimbabwe alone, Africa, or worldwide? And panel, we see to it that actually worldwide digital visibility is helping amplify youth voices, like the voice of Varaidzo Kativu in the UK panel. It was only that United Nations amplified her voice through digital literacy that she was actually able to advocate for 10 students in Zimbabwe to get education.
Sure.
Yes, we say denied. Yes, we say that this is a limited number of 10 students. But panel, we see to it that at the end of the day, 10 kids were actually empowered and were able to receive adequate education. So we're saying that it's actually a gradual change to long-term impact. Now, panel, they say that people in power highly succumb to things. Yes, panel, they do not succumb to petty things, but not to 1 million youth, panel, being broadcasted live in the street, matching that we need policies that are going to bring about changes in climate change that are going to be promoting renewable energy, panel, instead of fossil fuels. They will not reject to that. And panel, they also came that and say that there is no historical change, panel. But we see to it that in America in 2021, it was only when youth advocated for Floyd, panel, justice for Floyd, that the persecutor was able to be arrested. And panel, we see that they came here and say that the general nature of youth, their voices are not valued, panel. Panel, their voices are being valued. Right now, if you go online, we see that youth are out there advocating, their voices being heard, panel.
Engagement,
so we see to it that panel, the youth actually are being valued. That's why they were given 10 seats in the parliament. Actually, they were given 20 panel seats in the parliament so that they can use their voices, can be heard, to show that they are being valued, accepted.
So buying from opposition looks like numbers in terms of likes. It looks like numbers in terms of likes. So people could have been pedophiles liking hashtag justice for Twetwe. Please engage.
Okay, panel. But I would reply that later due to the nature of my time. Now, panel, they came here and said that trends, internet, they came here and talked about that trends move fast, panel. But we see to it that the internet does not forget. What was posted 5 years ago, panel, is still on the internet. What was posted 10 years ago is still on the internet, panel. So, panel, we actually see to it that one day, someone with interest, with zeal, like they said, it targets the one who's interested, panel. Yes, we need those who are interested, the ones who are with the zeal for what we are advocating for, to bring about later change, panel, even if they don't bring change today. We actually have assurance that they are going to bring it in the next 10 years because the trend was there online and it is still there. With this, I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. This has been the first half of our debate. We'll see you right after the break. See you soon. Welcome back to the SASI Debate Challenge 2025 edition, and today we are joined by some brilliant individuals, and now we're getting into the second half of our debate. May the member of government please come forward to make their stance heard.
Hello, everyone. We are proud to propose. As the opening government came here, they literally defined the motion in notion currently, and they did justice to it. When they said that, when they defined rise as part of slacktivism, trends, and the base of algorithms, ladies and gentlemen. And this then substantiates the fact that our opening government literally defined the motion, and it was quite sufficient, ladies and gentlemen. We then come to what the deputy leader of opposition was trying to reiterate on, and they literally pointed out the justice for Floyd, ladies and gentlemen, which was an issue that was actually taken in 2021, ladies and gentlemen. And now looking at the year that we are in, we're in 2025, what is the impact that has come from that movement ever since 2021, ladies and gentlemen? We then move on to the government defined the case extremely well, and they literally asked the question that was never answered, ladies and gentlemen, where they were illustrating that what if the people who are liking are actually pedophiles, ladies and gentlemen? The opposition failed to answer this, and this shows that their case is rather dwindling in front of our eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Looking at this, ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the opposition stated, a campaign can snowball into a trend quickly. This therefore means that, as the leader of opposition stated, a campaign can snowball into a trend quickly, but fizzles out quickly as well. This therefore means that how sure are we as a delegation, as a community, as a society, that whatever that is getting liked on social media is actually going to be engaged into the practicality of what we want to achieve as a people, ladies and gentlemen. We therefore stand to affirm that as we promote and extend the case, saying that digital visibility on its own nature, ladies and gentlemen, changes the nature of the activists themselves, whereby we're saying that these people are people who were literally firstly initiated into, or not necessarily initiated, but then these are people who began this whole discourse quite motivated as to what they are going to be, not taken, ma'am, quite motivated as to what they were trying to achieve. But then with passing time and fame, ladies and gentlemen, we know what fame does to the mind. They literally tend to forget what they were literally advocating for with passing time, ladies and gentlemen. And personal branding, influence culture, and performative outrage. All these are all consequences of this of the changes that these activists change, ladies and gentlemen. This dilutes the ideological coherence and collective spirit of a movement, where we are saying that the coherence is whereby this activist comes to us, she engages with us, or he or she engages with us, gives us all this motivation and all that, ladies and gentlemen. And then the collective spirit of a movement is then diluted in a way that with passing time, ladies and gentlemen, they are going to fail, or rather fall out of line with what they were trying to achieve initially, ladies and gentlemen. So for this, we stand to oppose what the opposition is trying to put across, saying that people are actually going to be liking this, and that's an engagement, and maybe it will actually be reshared and all that. But then the resharing and all that, ladies and gentlemen, the likes and all that, can we really gazette that as impactful change, ladies and gentlemen? And what is the safety of the people who are actually involved in these things? Whereby I'm saying digital visibility will actually dramatically increase the vulnerability of state repression, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at Chamisa, ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. We will now have a member from the opposing delegation. May you kindly come forward.
Countrymen and countrywomen, the government has failed to prove to us that digital visibility is unsustainable. In everything that they have presented to us, they have actually shown us in their failure to do so that indeed digital visibility is sustainable. First of all, the government says to us that young people are vulnerable. They are right in saying that they are vulnerable. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we are saying that if we accept that they are vulnerable, why then should we deny them the sole platform that they have, a platform that actually allows them in their varied nature in terms of where they are coming from, in terms of the community, and in terms of where they are, being able to access these platforms to actually then express themselves so that they have the capacity to live above their varied vulnerabilities. Further on, they say that digital visibility only gives us awareness. But ladies and gentlemen, in saying that digital visibility only gives us awareness, what they do not realize is that awareness is the beginning of sustainability. Why do we say awareness is the beginning of sustainability? It's because that for an act to be done, for people to act towards a specific cause, they need to be informed, they need to know, and that's exactly what digital visibility is actually accomplishing, a clear evidence of sustainability, ladies and gentlemen. We have experienced a lot of protests, but let's see where those protests are being informed from. They are being informed from social media, ladies and gentlemen. This is to actually inform us that, yes, social media is actually being able to translate into the physical realities, to show us its capacity, to show us its potential, and why we should continue to hold on to it, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that digital visibility itself is sustainable. Why do we say so? We consider its unlimited reach, ladies and gentlemen. Digital visibility is actually able to reach, is actually able to allow young people from different places, from different areas, to actually engage with one another, be able to share ideas. It is that varied connectivity that gives us sustainability, because we are saying our advantage are minds that are different, are minds that can actually address the situation at hand. We also look at, we also look at the aspect of unlimited the aspect of feasibility, ladies and gentlemen. In this context, what are we saying? Young people do not have the capacity, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to actually organize an activity because it comes with cost, especially in a physical context, ladies and gentlemen. So we are saying that social media is giving them that platform where they can actually be able to organize regardless of the costs that are there, ladies and gentlemen. It is also important for us, ladies and gentlemen, to also consider the aspect of increased active participation. We are saying that social media, this is a platform in which they have privacy, in which they have confidentiality, in terms of them having to engage, ladies and gentlemen. So they are able to actually express themselves freely, ladies and gentlemen. So the participation itself, being at an incremental height, is an advantage because it gives us a room to actually have to see the minds of young people. It gives us a room to actually see the ideas that they have in terms of what they want to accomplish, ladies and gentlemen. It all points to sustainability, ladies and gentlemen. Because when we're talking about sustainability, we are saying that are they being able to actually preserve the future and also preserve the present at the same time with what they are doing. And they have proven to do so, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. We will now take this time to hear from the Government Whip. May the Government Whip please come forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad that the opposition has come here and told us that youths, they need to know, they need to be informed. So, yes, they know they're informed. Then what? Ladies and gentlemen, we bring in the policy that is in our theme of today's debate, know and act. We're saying that, yes, these people, they have the information. Our opening government has already stated that the digital visibility amplifies the voices of the youth. They do not detract from the fact that youth voices are being advocated for, they're being amplified. But what we're saying is that this is not long-term. Ladies and gentlemen, my opening government looked at selectivism. They literally told us that there will be a lot of retweets, there will be a lot of followers on a post, but then what happens after that? Ladies and gentlemen, they went on to tell us that trends are short-lived, our opening government. They literally told us that, yes, they are effective, but we're looking at sustainability, we're looking at the long run. Now, my member of government came here and further went on to extend the case by saying that we are actually now focusing on change of nature of activists. The activists, they are being labeled as brand ambassadors. So what happens if you're labeling someone as brand ambassadors? You are literally following their lifestyle apart from what they're advocating for. Ladies and gentlemen, we see that there's distraction. We live in a global world where everyone has now, the leader of opposition came here and said that the opening government stated that they're limiting the scope. But we're living in a global world. A person in Zimbabwe can access TikTok, a person in America can access TikTok. There is no border, ladies and gentlemen. We live in a global world. So we're saying that there's distraction. We're actually distracted from the message that the people are sending. Yes, we know the message, right? Fridays for Future rejected. Let's act on climate change. Let's do this and do that. We actually know the message. But what we're saying is that we need to act. Is knowing enough? Is knowing about climate change enough? We need to act, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's move on to further substantiate on the point that my member of government has said on distraction. There's also fragmentation, ladies and gentlemen, where there are many trends at one time. Someone is talking about climate, someone is talking about education, someone is talking about rights. But without a clear strategic plan, this can dilute the force of amplification. Now, amplification becomes noise without organization, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to tell you that we are not detracting from the fact that digital visibility has indeed amplified the voice of the youths. Now, the closing opposition, they came and told us that campaigns, we cannot do campaigns because of fiscal constraint. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at climate issues. People are advocating for climate change. Planting a tree, how much do you need to plant a tree? You can always go outside with a banner. How much do you need? A pen and a paper? This clearly proves that this is very feasible, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to tell you that the reason why our side has actually won the debate is we managed to tell you that we're not detracting from the fact that digital visibility has amplified youth voices. We gave you the points. The opening government came here and they gave you the points that I've already mentioned before. And we also provided an extension on the social part of view, that distraction also results as a long-term, as a short-term impact. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very proud to oppose this case. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our respectable speakers. May our final whip please come forward and provide their case.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to conclude this debate, I would like to highlight a few things that I think are important. The opening government did mention just how the digital visibility is important and how youths are actually voicing their problems within these platforms. And then the opposition came and talked about clickvocacy, where most people are advocating just to get clicks, right? But then, and they talked about the algorithm as well, but the algorithm reads what you are interested in. Thus, it brings you the information that you need, and then it also links the people that it talks to mainly. Thus, it brings about the increase in active visibility and the active participation, where people actually talk about the things that need to be spoken about.
Point.
Right? And one thing that we have to understand is that the government whip was asking about how it distracts the message. How does it distract the message when it talks about activism, you focus on activism, and if you are specifically on that topic, you stick to that topic. We're not there to watch their lifestyles, we're here for the message. Thus, if you're interested in the message, you dig further into what you need to know, and you find the channels that help you understand the topics that you're talking about, right? They were talking about how the use of social media,
engagement.
they talked about, not taken, they talked about how my partner talked about youths not being able to physically meet because of funds. And she talked about how they can use planting trees as an example. How did you get the message out? And some of those messages are passed through Facebook, WhatsApp, and which is a digital platform.
Point of
When we're
information.
talking about digital platforms, let's not forget the platform that we're currently in as of now. The debate we're having right now, it talks about a number of active youth-led advocacy. As we are youth right now, we're advocating for different issues. And this is a digital platform because it's in different places. So that's something that we also have to look at. And also, we shouldn't forget that some digital platforms, like what they do post, it's something that they did physically to show the things that they have been doing. So it highlights active physical activism, not just what is shown on the digital platforms. So that's something that we also have to understand, right? So now we have to understand that as the closing government, we are saying that the long-term impact that they are saying are not there, are actually there, because if the platforms are used in the correct way that needs the people, and it meets the people that it's targeting, it meets the people and it touches them, it creates engagements, and in turn, it may reach NGOs and organizations that are willing to actually assist in these projects that they might, this advocacy that they might be going into. So there's something that we also have to highlight. So as the closing government, we are saying that these impacts have been met, and they are there. So it shouldn't be sidelined that digital platforms are only there just for the sake of clitovacy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And a sounding, resounding applause should be deserving to all of the amazing delegates that performed today. Within this term frame, we will now allow for a short period of deliberation with our adjudicators. See you right after the break. And we're back. Welcome to the 8th edition of the SASI Debate Challenge. I wish I had the honor of bestowing you with the medals that you all deserve. However, that will go to our lovely adjudication panel. I will now allocate this time period to the Chief Adjudicator to provide us with the results that we've all been waiting for. Chief Adjudicator, please take your stand.
Hello, fellow lovers of discourse and dialogue. Would like to thank you guys for a fairly interesting debate. I think a lot of interesting ideas on behalf of myself and the rest of the panel. We thought that the debate was interesting. We thought that a lot of interesting ideas were proposed, but straight to it. In terms of our core, and you can come to us later for further feedback, in 4th position, we had closing government. In 3rd position, we had closing opposition. In 2nd position, we had opening opposition, and in 1st position, we had opening government. Thank you for that debate, and good luck for the rest of the tournament.
Thank you very much to the Chief Adjudicator. This round will now determine who is going to the semifinals or not. Well, this has been a brilliant debate. This debate is not just for argument's sake, for people to stand here in branded t-shirts, standing and smiling at a camera, but we do this for the child that lacks contraception. We do this for the mothers that are struggling in rural areas. We do this for the future of Zimbabwe, as advocates, as leaders, as game changers and record breakers in our diverse spheres of influence. We understand the importance of sacrifice, and the sacrifices that have been made today will always prove that greatness is on the way. This has been a clash of titans, truly. We saw them fight like dogs till the death with every single breath that they had. However, when titans clash, we only know that one victor can arise. These kings, these queens that gave their blood, sweat, and tears have given everything that they have. However, you can also have everything that you desire and everything that you want as well, with SAYWHAT's events and lifestyle. We'd like to thank you for partnering with us today and joining us in this ability to walk in greatness and glory. Because today, we start the future. The revolution doesn't start with a like or a text. It starts with you becoming the change that you want to see within your community. It starts with you choosing to rise above the situation and say, as for me, and with all the adults around me complaining, it's time for me to say what and redefine the status quo. I've been your debate master, Master Jumbe, and I had the pleasure of being with you today. I hope that you had as much fun as I did. See you next time. Goodbye.
We did it, guys. We did it.
I look up in the sky, God is my angel. I look up in the sky, God gonna save me. I've got a vision, so I gotta work on it. Nobody bring me down, so I gotta go, gotta go.
I got a dream.